Hello everybody, and thank you so much for the support on my last video. So many of you commented wanting a tutorial, so today I'm going to show you how to turn something like that into something that looks a little bit more like this. So there really is quite a bit that you can do in this game when it comes to building. So if you want to add some arches, maybe some islands, you can build all sorts of gazebos and bridges. So this one here goes across the water. You can add caves if you'd like, and if you're feeling very ambitious, you can even add trees and houses. So I'm just going to start with some very basic things that I found helped me build. So the first thing is the grid. So you'll notice that when it's set to 1, it just feels very blocky, hard to control. But if you set it to 0.5, it just moves ever so slightly smoother, and it really helps when it comes to positioning things. So that's useful. When it comes to rotation, so for example, I'll set it to 10, and you'll notice that when you rotate, it's way smoother than when you're rotating at 45 degrees. Both are useful. Some of them are more useful in certain situations, so it's really up to you. And ignore water is a big one for when it comes to building bridges or putting rocks under the water. So if you want things under the water, you need to hit ignore water for that to work. For most of these settings, you really just gotta try and find what works for what you're trying to build. It's definitely not a science. So the first thing I'm gonna get into is connecting ladders. So the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is take your ladder out and rotate in whichever direction you want your ladder to go. And you'll notice that when you try and place another ladder on top, it's not lining up very well. So what you want to do is hit the pivot button, and you can select any one of these points here. I find that the corner tends to work best. And you'll just want to line that up with the other corner of the ladder, and you'll notice that it places nice and even and gets you right where you need to go. The next thing I'm going to get into here is building natural looking arches that don't look too blocky. So you'll notice that this is made up of a variety of rocks, and the way that you do this, so I'm just going to go over here, is you can start with placing one, but putting another one on top just doesn't really look that good. So you're going to want to rotate it onto its side, and again, this is where the pivot comes in handy. So you can grab wherever you want that to click, and you can just hover it over, place that down, and then the other side still looks pretty flat. So we're going to want to take another rock, rotate it around, if I can ever remember which way to rotate, and oh, it's phasing through. So here we're going to want to use the pivot again, grab that little guy, and paste him on there. And you can use some little rocks in between if you want to add some variations, rotate in different ways. After this point, you can basically just keep going and make almost any shape you want. The next thing I'm going to cover here is bridges that go over the water. So these look really fancy, and you'll notice that they use a lot of paths and fences, and a lot of people tend to try and build them with just paths on top of the water. But I'm sure you've probably found out by now that you can't walk on those. So I'm going to show you how to do it so that you can walk across your bridges. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to grab a log. And again, the pivot is very useful for this. So you're probably going to want to line it up better than I am, but I'm just going to put it right here. And you can connect another one right there, and so on and so forth. And then here is where you will be able to put your paths down. So again, you might need to use the pivot function right on the very bottom of the path. And you'll just want to add those on top of your log, like so. And you can walk on them. Again, you're going to want to line it up a lot better than I did, because this is not even connected to the edge of my pond. So that's that, and if you really wanted to make it look nice, you can take some of these fences here and put them along the very edge. So right about there, and add another one using the pivot right on the edge of the other fence. And then you can just keep connecting them just like that all the way down. So the next thing that I'm going to get into here is building roofs. So let's say that you've just built yourself a nice little cabin and you would like to add a roof. Now, it's really hard to get the roofs to look nice. You can use almost any material that you want. I usually like to use this one because it just kind of looks like shingles. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is rotate your roof to the angle that you want it to face. So we'll put this side on, and you're going to want to use the pivot. Usually the middle one works the best for lining it up to the wall. So you'll take that, line it up nicely against your wall, and put it down. And then you can put another one right beside it. And then you're going to want to do the same thing on the other side. So rotate it over. You can also, if you don't feel like rotating all the way, use the pivot function and just grab this other corner. And you can put that down on the other wall, lined up with your other side of the roof. Just like that. Add your next piece. And then for the middle, you're probably going to want to climb up top. So you can grab a small piece of whatever material you used, and you're going to want to rotate that to fill in the gap. So this one here, I'm going to rotate this way, and I'm going to use the pivot function to grab a corner of this, and I'm going to try and see if I can get it to line up nicely, just like that, and set it down. And you'll notice that it's really hard to get that lined up with the other piece, so you'll want to use the pivot again, grab the center, and line it up with the piece that you already placed. So you can do that. You can do that again on this piece, like so. And then on the front piece, it's not going to work with that pivot. So you're going to need to select the pivot again, grab this side, and then paste it onto the front of the very first piece you laid. And it gives you a pretty decent result for a roof. Again, it's definitely not going to be perfect, but there you go. So the next thing that I'm going to show you how to build is natural looking trees. So the first thing that you're going to want to start with here is to grab a tree stump. So I usually like to place at least 3 or 4 of these together. You can rotate them pretty much any direction. It doesn't really matter too much. Place them around like that. And you can grab something like log stacks, logs, anything you would want to use as a base. Log stacks do tend to build up the fastest, so you'll just want to rotate that onto its end and grab the pivot, which will just be the middle one, and paste that on top of your stumps. So you can put that there, and then rotate for just a little bit of variation and put that down. And you can even grab a couple of these little tiny logs here and pivot, rotate, just put them all along the base so that they look a little bit more like a tree. So this one, I am just going to set it right there. And you can grab a couple other little logs, maybe just some plain logs, and put those around where it feels like there's gaps. So I'll stick one up here. And you can also use the pivot function if you do want to have them further in. So if you grab the outer face, it puts it inside of the other logs. So you can use that to cover up the bands if you're not a big fan of that. So after you got your base down, the next thing that you're going to want to do is start putting your branches on. So you can start with a couple little logs just like this, and then maybe grab some bigger ones and just rotate those around so it feels a lot more lifelike. So this one I'm just going to set here, and it really doesn't matter too much what it looks like underneath. So we'll just grab a pivot here, put another branch, and you can just keep placing them all over here. So I'm just going to speed through this. On your larger branches, you can also add a bunch of these little logs, and it just makes it feel that much more like a tree. So once you have something that you feel happy with, the next thing that you're going to want to do is grab a couple haystacks. Now, this method might not work for you if you don't have the color game pass. I do, and that was the only way that I could make a tree. So you'll want to set that to a nice green color. So something like that looks nice. And then you can copy that and paste it onto your other haystack. And then for the rest of it, you can use things like rocks to fill in the gaps. So this gives it kind of a blocky tree-like texture. So you can put some of that there, maybe rotate them around a little bit. And you can also color these green, and it blends in with the haystacks fine. So you can keep doing that all the way around, and it will eventually start to look much like a tree. You can even use the little rocks to kind of cover up these stumps on the end of these logs here. It makes it look a lot nicer, even if nobody's ever going to see it. And if you want, you can even use things like wreaths to help blend in the base of your tree and just make it feel a little bit more like it belongs there. And there you go. The next thing that I'm going to show you how to build is a bit of a two-in-one. So you'll notice that my cave is made of a lot of walls, but on the outside, it is covered in rocks. Now, you're probably going a bit insane with how many rocks that I use, but they are a very versatile building tool. So to get started with this, you are going to want to take out some walls. So for this one, you are going to need the rock walls, and you'll just want to kind of place them in a way that feels natural. So you might need to use the pivot just to connect them a little bit, but they definitely don't have to be perfect. So put one of those, and you can take one of these little guys here and paste them along. And once you get something going that feels like a bit of a natural shape, you can take some rocks and put those along the bottom. So just place them where they aren't all right on top of each other. And again, just like the arch, you can rotate these and use the pivot so that they sit on the outside. And you'll just want to use these to kind of help cover up a lot of the cracks. So you can rotate this again, maybe use some different rocks, and just paste those up the sides, just like that. And you can even take some of these other rocks here, rotate those around in any way. It doesn't even have to be straight. It is basically a mountain. And if you feel like it, you can even use these tiny little guys here and there. And you can also help to blend it in a lot with a lot of these plants. So short reeds, tall reeds, flowers. You'll notice I did that a lot on mine over here. So I surrounded my little island with those. So when you get your rocks all built up, when it comes to the top, you can take pieces of wood or really any building material, and you are going to need to use a pivot and line that up with your wall, and you can set that right there, just like that, and that'll kind of be your land on top. So again, this does kind of require the color pass to blend it in. And you can take some of these grass mounds and put them around the edge just to kind of help make it match. And for the color, you can just color these green. If you want to be very particular, you can copy the color green from the grass mounds and paste it onto these items. For the sake of this, I'm just going to put any old green on here just to show you. Do that. And just put another green in here. Oops. There we go. Right, and then you end up with something that really starts to look a lot more like a little island. You can even add these little houses up top and just make it a really cute little space. And when it comes to putting the rocks around, you really don't have to worry too much about the back. Not many people are going to see it, so focus a lot of your rock efforts onto the front. So next up, we got hanging bridges. So these are pretty finicky to set up. I did have to cut a lot of video when I was trying to make this. So you can set the rotation pretty much anything you'd like depending on how swoopy you want your bridge to be. I will say that whatever your building is set to will affect the angle that your bridge goes on. So because I set this to 10 and my building was built on 45 degrees, it doesn't quite sit on the exact same angle, which you can use to your advantage. So I'll show you here. So this is set to 10, and you'll just want to start angling these ladders down. So there's my first ladder. And then for the second one, you're just going to want to angle it ever so slightly less. So we'll stick that there. And you will definitely be using a lot of pivots here. It might not necessarily be the corner pivot, just line it up the best that you can. This one, right about here. And for the next ladder, you're going to want to rotate it. And this one's going to start going up. So we're going to want to put this around here. And we will probably need to use the pivot again, just to line that up. So grab this, put it right around here. It does not have to be perfect, so long as it's mostly flat. Stick that right here, and it starts to give us the shape of a hanging bridge. So now what you're going to want to do is come up here and start putting down your paths. So this is what I was mentioning earlier when it comes to the degrees, is when you go to put your paths back on here and it's set to 10 and yours is set to 20, it's not going to go the same direction. So you'll need to set this back to 10 again so that we can put the path down. So go like this right now and set it to 10. And now when you reset and rotate, it will line up correctly. So I'll speed along and put these paths down. And you will need to remember to change your rotation as you go. And once you're done laying all your paths, you'll have yourself a nice hanging bridge. The last thing I'm going to show you here is just how to add a cute little gazebo to your pond. So this one's nice and easy. All you're going to need is some arches. You can use any arch you'd like. So for this one, I'm just going to use the flower arch. And all you have to do is just place an arch, rotate, place another, and one more, and you just end up with a really nice gazebo. And if you have the color pass, you can color this in any way that you like and make it very cute. It's a very nice addition to any pond. Thank you so much for watching, and if there is any other builds that you would like to see, just leave a comment below and I will do my best. See you next time.